Welcome to 30 minutes of VOA Learning English, the voice of America's information service for people learning English. Join us now for the Agriculture Report and Science in the News, coming up after As It Is.
Hello there, I'm June Sims, and this is As It Is from VOA Learning English. Bullying is an international issue affecting nearly every society. Today, we hear what some people in the United States are doing to try to stop it. But first, the number of reported attacks against Muslims in Britain nearly doubled last year. The increase has led to concern among Muslim community leaders and calls for changes in government policies. Steve Ember has more on the story in this report from VOA's Al Passon in London.
British officials and Muslim leaders blame the increase in anti-Muslim attacks largely on one incident, which was recorded on a security camera. 2 Muslim men killed a British soldier in London, and the two claimed they did it for Islam. But anti-Muslim feeling in Britain goes beyond that. Fiaz Mughal is the director of a community organization called Faith Matters.
There is a what we call a background noise of anti-Muslim hate that has quite significant volume. That volume is both online as well as offline. There are troubling indicators that anti-Muslim hate is unfortunately on the social horizon and probably here to stay for some time.
Experts say most of the anti-Muslim attacks come in the form of insults and property damage, but some mosques have been targeted. At a mosque in North London, someone threw the head of a pig over a fence next to the religious center. As people gathered for midday prayers on one recent Friday, newspapers were reporting a sharp increase in the Muslim population in Britain. This left community leaders wondering what effect the newspaper reports might have. Omar Al-Hamdoun is president of the Muslim Association of Britain.
An increase in the number of Muslims means that as Muslims we need to tackle anti-Muslim hatred or Islamophobia so that Muslims are feeling more and more part of society.
But he notes that it is difficult at times.
As Muslims, we have our own practices, we have our own needs, we have our own reasoning. So I think all of these things are actually difficult for us to fully integrate in society.
Britain's 1.6 million Muslims make up 3% of the population and are a part of everyday life. But Muslim leaders say a small number of militants and other issues serve to intensify divisions in the country and across Europe. The issues include tensions in the Middle East and anti-immigrant feelings in Britain.
Europe, unfortunately, has a strain of hate that seems to run through it. Something about Europe seems to carry this rejection of the other.
Fiaz Mughal says Britain's one-year-old rules on hate speech need to be tightened. He also says police need to react more quickly to anti-Muslim incidents. And he says judges should give stronger sentences to people convicted of hate crimes. He and other experts say there is also a lot for community organizations to do to educate Muslims and the larger society. He says they need to show what Islam is and how it can fit into a society very different from its traditional homelands. I'm Steve Ember.
You are listening to As It Is, our daily program for people learning English. I'm June Sims in Washington. Bullying is not a new issue. It exists in almost every society. It takes different forms, including social isolation and verbal and physical attacks. There is also cyberbullying, the electronic posting of mean messages targeted at a specific person. Alana Bioryak is a high school senior in North Carolina. 3 years ago, she spent most of her time with one group of girls. They were close friends, or so she thought.
We'd eat together for lunch and go to parties and share secrets. And one day I decided to sit with a different group of girls at lunch, which I didn't think would be a problem.
But it was.
I was sort of cornered by my friend group and told, you're not allowed to do that. You have to sit with us. It's not allowed to sit with other people. And at that moment, I sort of realized, are these girls really my friends?
Bioryak talked to the girls about her concerns.
You're supposed to support me and to help me and encourage me, and I don't feel like you're doing that. And I wasn't sure we could be friends anymore.
Alana Bioryak is one of more than 80 teenagers who shared their experiences in a new book, Under Attack: True Stories, written by teen victims, bullies, and bystanders.
It's extremely painful to hear how cruel, people can be towards each other.
Stephanie Meyer is the co-creator of a monthly magazine written by and for teens. She helped edit the stories in the book. She says bullying is a serious problem among youth.
Very often, a young person who is bullied becomes very depressed, or because they're depressed, the bullying affects them even more. And there are too many instances of teens who have committed suicide as a result.
But bullying, she says, can also be a cry for attention.
Very often, the bullies themselves have been victims, and they are trying to regain the power that they had lost in being bullied at home, being bullied by older children when they were young, and so they regain a sense of power by being the actual bully.
With the growth of social media, cyberbullying has also become a problem.
There's one young woman who was at a party at the end of the summer, and they were playing on a slip and slide, and, at one point, part of her bathing suit apparently was kind of revealing, and a picture was taken, and it was posted on Facebook, and she was not even aware of it for weeks.
That girl was 17-year-old Autumn Bornhawk.
I was mortified. I could not believe that these girls who I thought were my friends had not told me that this picture was online.
At first, she says she was too ashamed to tell her family.
I was actually at the doctor's office with my mom one day, and one of my true friends texted me and said, "Oh my goodness, there's been another post on your Facebook wall." So I went and I read it, and I just started crying. Then my mom asked me, why I was crying. So then I told her, and she immediately started calling all of these other girls' parents and asking them to remove these nasty posts.
College freshman Sitav Nabi also suffered bullying in the 7th grade. She is now 18 years old. She says it was a painful experience that she will never forget. And she says people who stand by and watch such incidents are just as guilty as the bullies.
If you are watching someone being bullied, clearly being attacked, and you know it's wrong, you have to stand up and make them stop, because you're traumatizing another human being.
Sitav Nabi and the other teens who shared their experiences about bullying hope to bring more attention to the problem. They say this will help other youth realize that they are not alone. They can stand up for themselves and their friends and put an end to bullying. that's as it is for today. Thanks for joining us. Have a question or comment about our show? We would love to hear from you. Email us at learningenglish@voanews.com. I'm June Sims. I hope you will join me again next week for more news on As It Is.
The Agriculture Report is next, followed by Science in the News. You can read and listen to our programs and download MP3s at learningenglish.voanews.com. You can learn with us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at VOA Learning English.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Agriculture Report. The United Nations says farmers in the Central African Republic need seeds and tools before the next planting season if the country is to avoid a food crisis. Two high-level UN officials were recently in Bangui, the capital of the C.A.R. One of them, John Ging, is the Operations Director of the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. He told reporters the international community must help Central Africans displaced by fighting to plant enough food for the next harvest. The next planting season begins in March.
The most urgent needs are exactly what you would expect: assistance with the seeds and tools for helping themselves to recover their livelihoods. We've got to focus on helping people to help themselves.
The United Nations says conflict within the C.A.R. has displaced more than 800,000 people, most of them since September. It says not enough land was planted because of the conflict throughout the country last year. Food supplies are now very low, and there is a shortage of seeds. A complete breakdown of law and order last year meant that crime was a problem. In many areas, bandits stole seeds, farm animals, tools, and other equipment. Some villages were burned to the ground. The group Human Rights Watch has been watching the situation in the country. It says the Seleka rebels, who seized power last March, destroyed many areas even after their leader had become president. The Central African Republic is home to about 4.5 million people, but the UN Food and Agriculture Organization says more than 1 million of them lack a reliable, dependable food supply. Last month, Mr. Ging called for more aid organizations to come to the C.A.R.
We need more of the large international non-governmental organizations to come here urgently. If you go to any of the countries where we have very large humanitarian operations, you will see all of the big international non-governmental organizations present in those countries. Many of those large international organizations are not present in this country.
He also asked for more money to meet the needs of the country. So far, he said, only $30 million had been received after groups asked for $247 million. He said the needs are increasing. And that's the Agriculture Report from VOA Learning English. For more stories about agriculture, go to our website, learningenglish.voanews.com. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, all at VOA Learning English. Write to us. Our email address is learningenglish@voanews.com. I'm Christopher Cruz.
From VOA Learning English, this is Science in the News. I'm Bob Doty.
And I'm Catherine Cole. Today, we go to Botswana, where an international gathering recently agreed on urgent steps to protect elephants in Africa. But first, we report on a new movie about the search for oil and gas and what the film forced the government of Botswana to do.
Jeff Barbie is an American filmmaker. He records real-life events on film. Mr. Barbie was working on a story in South Africa about the Karoo Desert when he saw a map of Botswana. What he saw shocked him. The map showed that large parts of Botswana were open for oil and gas exploration. He traveled to the country. There he found evidence that the government had given its permission for fracking in environmentally sensitive areas. But officials had not told anyone about the activity.
Fracking is also called hydraulic fracturing. It is a process that uses high-pressure water and chemicals to break up underground rocks. This can cause oil or natural gas to be released. Critics say fracking operations are noisy. They also say fracking can create air pollution and pollute water supplies. But supporters say the activity is safe and creates jobs. And they say it will help meet the world's future energy needs. Mr. Barbie's discovery of fracking in Botswana led him to make a documentary on the subject. His film is called The High Cost of Cheap Gas. It documents and compares the process in both Botswana and the American state of Colorado. The film aims to show Africans what their future may look like if fracking operations continue.
In the film, farmers in Colorado say they had to stop raising cattle because fracking ruined the animals' water supply. Some Americans said they suspect fracking made them sick. Medical experts noted serious health problems from the chemical byproducts released. Jeff Barbie says this could all happen in Africa. The film reports what few people have known, that Botswana's government had quietly permitted searches for oil and gas in rural, unpopulated areas of the country. Mr. Barbie spoke to officials from Sasol, an energy business based in South Africa. The officials spoke about their projects in Botswana. The film uses hidden cameras to show what appeared to be fracking operations in national parks. Mr. Barbie says the movie is not designed to criticize fracking. He says it is an effort to educate people about the process. He hopes this will lead to international discussions on the future of the industry.
Alan Schwartz is an environmentalist. He says the film will have an effect on people not only in Botswana, but around the world. He says the movie is about getting people to talk to each other and to make sure they understand the effects of breaking up the underground rock. Mr. Schwartz says fracking has already caused problems in his home country, Mozambique.
The fracking at this stage is exploratory, and it's happening on the borders of South Africa and Zimbabwe. And the consequences there at this stage is that it's providing money to a kleptocratic government. It does not provide any work at all for anybody who is on the ground, who is local, but it is a massive amount of money that's coming in.
Mr. Barbie says the discussions need to start with solid facts. He notes that the oil and gas industry has provided financial support for many pro-fracking studies. He says he used only independent research to make the film.
This is a baseline where we can all have a communal conversation focused on the facts. Yes, there will be jobs, but those jobs might be more temporary than the governments and industry will admit. Yes, there are environmental impacts, but maybe they're not as bad as some environmentalists say. Yes, in fact, this industry can go forward safely in some areas here, but maybe not in the protected national parks, which have been set aside for decades for the future of humanity.
At first, the government in Botswana denied it had given approval for fracking operations in the country. But after the movie was released, the government confirmed that some subsurface fracturing had been approved. Botswana has a comparatively small population for a country of its size. Only about 2 million people live there. Botswana is about the same size as Kenya, where more than 43 million people live. The secrecy of letting energy companies search for gas and oil was a surprise to many. Botswana is known to be one of Africa's least corrupt nations. Its economy is based on the trade of diamonds.
Shortly after the film was shown last year, the government released a statement. It said, permission has been given in some instances in the past for the use of industrial explosives in subsurface fracturing, which some may view as a type of fracking. The government said it has given permission for oil and gas explorations in Chobe National Park. The park is home to the world's largest herd of migrating elephants. Fracking is also taking place in the Central Kalahari Game Reserve, home to the San people. The San are believed to be one of the world's oldest cultures. They have for many years fought the government over land they claim as theirs.
Richard Lee works at the Open Society Initiative for Southern Africa. The group provided financing for the film. Mr. Lee says it is important for Botswana's government to show transparency and be more open with the public.
This is a story about gas concessions across the country that people in that country don't know anything about. So yes, the impact on the San is important, but so is the impact on other people in the country and the nation as a whole. And that's why everyone in the country needs to have the right information, the latest information, so that they can decide for themselves what's in the best interests of Botswana.
The Open Society Initiative for Southern Africa placed information about the film and the issue of fracking on its website. There is also a page on the Facebook social media website with more information about the film and fracking. Mr. Barbie says all he wants is for the people of Botswana to be able to decide how much fracking, if any, they want to permit in their country.
Finally, an international gathering in Botswana has agreed on a plan of action to fight illegal trade in ivory and protect elephant populations in Africa. The International Union for Conservation of Nature announced the new measures late last year at the African Elephant Summit in Botswana's capital, Gaborone. Ivory can be used in artwork or manufacturing. The hard white material comes from the tusks or teeth of elephants. The new international agreement urges governments to identify ivory trafficking as a serious crime. It calls on them to require the strongest sentences for crimes against wildlife. It also urges nations to work together on legal issues such as the capture and trial of criminal suspects and seizure of their property.
The president of Botswana, Ian Khama, told the delegates he supports the agreement.
A strong momentum from all over the world is developing to turn this tide, and many nations and individuals are calling for solutions that are implementable and will work. It is now time for Africa and Asia to join forces to protect this universally valued species. I wholeheartedly invite your active participation and equally anticipate your unprecedented commitment to action.
The gathering included government agencies and wildlife organizations from African nations where elephants live. Representatives of Asian nations whose citizens buy ivory were also present. Julia Marton-Lefebvre is the head of the International Union for Conservation. She says it is a good sign that both African and Asian nations attended the summit.
The fact that this was a meeting involving the entire value chain of the elephant situation, the range countries, the transition countries, and the consumer countries, was unique and very important. And I think this sort of model will actually be followed in other parts of the world for other species, and of course the Asian elephant also.
Conference organizers said Africa could lose 20% of its elephant population in 10 years if illegal hunting continues at the current rate. They said the hunting has increased in recent years because of poverty and weak governance in Africa. They also noted rising demand for ivory in some countries. Recently, China publicly destroyed more than 6 tons of ivory. The move was an effort to raise public understanding of the importance to protect wildlife. Experts say Africa has an estimated 500,000 elephants. Botswana's wildlife and tourism minister, C.A.R, says elephants help the economies of African nations. He says that without the animals, Botswana's travel industry would suffer. And he says making a decision to protect the elephants is not only for those at higher levels in the government, but for communities across the nation.
This Science in the News was written by Christopher Cruz. Our producer was June Sims. I'm Bob Doty.
And I'm Catherine Cole. Join us again next week for more news about science on the Voice of America.